Hi, okay, today we're going to learn how to do dandelion oil. After we finish, you're going to like, oh my lord, why didn't I do that before? It's so good and it's so valuable. And the dandelion oil is awesome for skin conditions, arthritis, diabetes, eczema. I'll put up a posting on what it's good for. It's just too much. So I'd already done a prayer of thanksgiving. We always, when we gather our plants, we always do a prayer of thanksgiving. If you're a non-religious person, don't look at it as a religious thing. It's more of a just paying thanks to the plant for giving up part of its life, as well as sharing its magical powers, its spiritual powers, and healing powers. And because I'd already done that prayer, sprinkle my talk around, now I'd gather, and just so you know, there's different methods. I saw it on a video, it looked really cool, and I saw it's a thrift shop, so I grabbed that one, just so I could look cool. And so when you're gathering them, you're just picking off the tops. And once you pick off the tops, you put them in your container. And then we're going to walk on over here because I got everything set up and ready to go in the different stages. Okay, so we're going to go over here now. Okay, so what I do is I usually use one of those pop containers, 2-4 bottles. I'll get my dandelions and I'll start picking them apart a bit with taking that stem off. Sometimes that gives it a bit of a bitter taste, especially when you're taking the dandelion oil under your tongue with a dropper. Other people, they'll actually spend the time and take that green right off altogether. And that a lot of the times, if they're going to make the tea out of this stuff here, this will take the bitter out of the tea. And so it's a little bit more work, but at the end result, when we're making the oil, it's almost the same anyway. But if you're going to make the tea to make it more flavorful and less bitter, I'd recommend taking that little green parts off in the end. So after that's done, I'm going to put it on my trampoline, or I'll leave it outside just for a while. And it takes about 12 hours or so. I've learned, I made my own little dry station downstairs with one of those clothes racks. And so I'll put my heater underneath it and it'll just dry it faster. And this is basically what it's going to look like when it's done and ready to go. It's really light, it's really fluffy. Right? And then so once you get to that stage, you're gonna always remember that you got to have some kind of little stick, because you got to get the air bubbles out. And the oils that we use, it's a preference. You have different types. I myself use extra, and it's got to be extra virgin olive oil if you're going to use olive oil. And it's the way that they process it, why we use the extra virgin olive oil. You can also use coconut oil as well, but they all when you use your oils, you got to kind of think about what does the oil do too. So when I found out what olive oil did medicinically, it was awesome. Like it itself does a lot of goodness to it too. So now I have to combine all the medicinical values of the dandelion and the medicinical values of the olive oil and combine it together. That's why when you get mixtures, sometimes the list is so long of what it'll do for you. Right? And so now what we're going to do, you can use either size jars. I have enough for the big one right now, so I'm going to use the big one. And it's basically, well, how much am I going to use in a year? I myself, I do this work for the Creator, and so I make quite a bit because I hand out a lot of it. But if I was on my own individual, I'm making it for myself, I'd probably make one about that size. Because you can keep adding in, I'll tell you that later. Right? And so what we're going to do now, and I bought this at the dollar store. A lot of my tools are all straight dollar store stuff, so it's affordable for me. And I saw this, so I thought, hey, that's really cool. And it just made it easier to load everything up. And so what you're going to do is you're going to fill her up about 3/4 full. Tap it down a little bit. And that's why I use this. If you notice, I just dumped it all over the place. Right? Okay, so that's and that's that. And the next stage we do is we grab our oil, whatever we prefer to use, and we're going to fill that up. Now the important thing when you're filling or when you're doing the oil is you got to try to get as many air bubbles out of the jar as you can. And so pouring it slower is better. That way it doesn't form as many air bubbles. And you're going to have to add some anyway because my dandelions are dry. They're going to absorb a lot, and we're going to be shaking it for the next week for sure, 2 or 3 times a day, every day. And then for after that, I'll be shaking it maybe once a week, twice a week, if I remember, right? And so once you get it right there, you'll notice I'm right about there on the line. Later on throughout the day, after I do this part, it'll wind up soaking up in the dandelion and it'll come down, so I just add some more. And the reason I have the chopstick or a popsicle stick or something, I like the chopstick, it's to just dip it in there. And as you're doing this, you're going to see the air bubbles popping up all over the place. Don't stir it. It just makes more air bubbles. You literally have to go in and tap it. And as you're tapping it, you'll see it all coming up. So this whole procedure, technically you can get it done in an afternoon, especially if it dries fast. You're thinking, oh, why don't I just throw them in wet? Well, oil and water don't mix at all. You can do them wet if you want, but like I said, oil and water, they just don't mix well. And so what we do is just give them a quick little drying. And if you're super impatient, then get some parchment paper, a cookie sheet, sprinkle your dandelion on the parchment paper, throw it in the oven at 150, and just watch it and make sure you get in there and stir it around a little bit. Another thing that I can do here as well to speed up the whole process is I can set up a double boiler system. And on that double boiler system, I'm going to bring the water to a boil. As soon as it comes boiling, I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to place this into the water. And that's going to get it reacting really good. Because there's 2 other methods I'm going to share with you right now. Once you get all of your oil in there where it's covering all of the dandelions, because anything sticking up a lot of the times, if you forget about it for a couple of weeks, that might actually develop mold. And that's also another reason we get rid of all of the air bubbles in there so that mold doesn't come in. See, even just that little bit of time, I had soaked it up. And so, as easy as that, we're done. And so now, if you went with the hot water method, put it in there, put your lid on, label when you made it, and label it the date that you made it in, like the day you did it, the year you did it in, and what type of oil you used. A lot of those things you think you're going to remember, but when you start getting into this stuff, you kind of get excited at times. Like, oh my God, I can do it with this. I can do absolutely any type of flower you want. The rose oil was the first one I taught my daughter, Autumn Dawn. And she made actually a better batch than I did because she had more patience and she let her sit longer than mine did. And so it's up to you. It's pretty easy to do. Try both methods if you want. And have at her. And in 4 weeks, it's ready to go. In 6 weeks, it's better than ready to go. In 6 months, it's even better than ready to go. The longer you leave it, the more powerful it gets. Also, when we drain it, which is another video, I can actually drain all of this and put it in more dandelion oil and start it soaking again just to make it stronger, right? Okay. I hope you learned something, and I hope I wasn't talking too fast. Have a great day.